Welcome back to Hardball. Republican governors in Iowa and Florida are making it harder for felons who have served their sentences to get back a fundamental right of citizenship, the right to vote. Critics argue it's just another way to tamp down voter turnout ahead of November's election, especially among typically Democratic voters. The Bureau of Justice reports that 60% of prison inmates across the nation are black or Hispanic. Florida and Iowa are two of a handful of states that don't automatically reinstate an ex-felon's right to vote, but they happen to be swing states. Joining me now are Lenny Curry, chairman of the Florida Republican Party, and Eugene Robinson, an MSNBC political analyst and Washington Post columnist. Mr. Curry, what accounts for the change from Charlie Crist's watch to Governor Scott's watch? Why?
Well, Charlie Crist showed the comedian that he was and that he doesn't stand for anything when he automatically restored felons' rights without any process before any board or any hearing. The question is, when you think about a felony, so someone, for example, a drug trafficker, someone that has literally destroyed the lives of children, what would you say to their families? That person serves their time and their voting rights to automatically be restored.
Well, I would say the same thing that I said about Michael Vick playing quarterback for the Eagles. I don't like it, but he's paid his debt to society. The man's got to eat. And if we really believe in the process of fulfilling one's debt to society, then you've got to allow them all the rights of personage, which includes voting. No?
Well, it's reasonable to have a waiting period. And after that waiting period, a process whereby you go before a board and you make your case as to why your voting rights should be restored. As a felon, you have violated the rights of other citizens. And by the way, criminals not being able to vote goes back to Romans and the Greeks.
I get it, but in most states, as you well know, in the United States, that's not the way it's handled. Now there are just a handful of states that do not allow you to come back and immediately re-enter. Look, I'm not for felons, but if you've paid your debt to society, then we've got to let you walk out and reestablish your ties to the community. Eugene Robinson, where am I wrong in all this?
Oh, you're right, Michael, actually. I mean, look, why do we have prisons? We have prisons and prison sentences to punish people for the crimes they committed. And so if you committed a felony, you should go to jail and you should pay your debt to the society. Once you pay that debt, it's paid. And I do not believe and will never believe that you should give up your citizenship and your rights as a citizen because of a crime that you've already paid your debt to society for. I think
Eugene,
that's
I have said that I don't believe in coincidence. Where you have almost 36 states, quote unquote, tightening their voter ID standards at a time when the nation is looking at the potential re-election of the first African American president, you start to think, what's going on out there? Is this all connected? Is what I want to ask you.
Oh, I absolutely believe it's all connected. I mean, you certainly heard what the House
Mr.
Majority
Curry.
Leader in Pennsylvania said.
Mr. Terzai. Yeah.
Terzai, right, about, voter ID will allow Mitt Romney to win Pennsylvania. And, it is about reducing the number of voters who are deemed likely to vote for Democrats.
Mr. Curry, would you respond to that? Because, I want to be fair to you, but that's also how I see it, sir.
We don't believe that felons should never have the right to vote again. There should be a process after they serve their time whereby they can apply to have the right to vote. The other side of this is the Democrats are making this argument not because they believe felons should vote. They want this to be a political issue. They want to pit one group against another because they don't have a record to run on.
The Associated Press, gentlemen, has reported that since Governor Terry Branstad took office in January of 2011, 8,000 felons in Iowa have finished their prison sentences or been released from community supervision, but less than a dozen have successfully navigated the process of applying to get their citizenship rights back. Branstad's office has denied a handful of others because of incomplete paperwork or unpaid court costs. Eugene, it's an instance like that, coupled with Florida, coupled with Kentucky, and I think Virginia is the fourth, that causes me to say it would appear that there's something going on.
Yes, and appearances in this case, add up to a big picture, and we all know what that picture is. It is an attempt at disenfranchisement. That's the big picture. Specifically on felons' voting rights, I think there's a fundamental question here. Have you paid your debt to society or not? And if you have, then there should be no process. There should be no lengthy form that you have to fill out. You should not have to go in front of a board because, again, that's what we have punishments for. And once the punishment is done, it's done. You've paid your debt, and you ought to be able to have the full rights of citizenship.
Mr. Curry, your response to that is what?
Yeah. Part of paying the debt is proving that you can assimilate back into society and that you, in fact, should have the right to vote based on your performance and that you're not going to participate in criminal activity anymore. Think about drunk driving. So you get pulled over for DUI, you go to jail, you pay a fine, and you lose your license. So should it just be one of those for the penalty, or are all three of those part of the penalty?
Right, but respectfully, there's a causal connection there. There's a nexus, a tie between operating a vehicle while you're drunk and surrendering your license. In this case, what's it got to do with voting, I guess would be the question.
Okay, so a felon committed a crime and violated the rights of another citizen and individual. They served their time in jail, and now without proving that they've turned their life around, they're going to go and cast votes for the people that are going to set the laws that they broke? There's a relationship there as well.
Wouldn't the bigger issue be, why are we even letting you out of jail? I mean, if that's the level of concern, like, hey, we got some worries here that this person might not be ready to reacclimate, then and it seems to me we shouldn't be letting you out to begin with. That's a much bigger issue than whether you vote.
We're simply saying there ought to be a waiting period, a time where they can then appeal and they get their voting rights back. This is common sense. Talk to the families that have had a felony committed against them.
Attorney General Eric Holder spoke at the NAACP convention yesterday, took aim at Texas's new voter ID law. He called the burdens imposed on the law poll taxes, that, of course, a reference to the Jim Crow era fees that used to disenfranchise black people. Take a look at this.
Many of those without IDs would have to travel great distances to get them, and some would struggle to pay for the documents they might need to obtain them. We call those poll taxes. Yes. We will be vigilant, and we will be strong. But let me be clear. Let me be very clear. We will not allow political pretext to disenfranchise American citizens of their most precious right.
Eugene, this is also playing itself out in my home state, Chris's native Pennsylvania, where we've all seen the report. 9.2% lack the principal form of identification supplied by the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. I am hearing that the ACLU is going to document it's even higher than 9.2%, and that the ACLU also believes that the state of Pennsylvania, in defending its voter ID law, cannot produce one case of impersonation fraud like this is intended to prevent.
The state has not yet produced one case of impersonation, and in fact, between 2002 and 2007, the Justice Department under President Bush conducted a nationwide, huge effort against voter fraud. They were prodded by Republican political activists to do this, and they did it. And they ended up convicting a grand total in a country of 300 million people. They convicted 86 people. Most of them, incidentally, a lot of them were felons who had voted. Who weren't aware that they didn't yet have the right to vote. They had thought, quite rightly, that they had served their sentence and they could vote. That was the most they netted in this campaign against voter fraud, and not, as far as I can tell, not a single case of impersonation of the kind that would be solved by voter ID.
Thank you, Eugene Robinson. Thank you as well, Lenny Curry. We appreciate you being here.